Are you searching for a deeper understanding of your faith?
Inspiring Philosophy is your go-to resource for exploring the rich tapestry of Christian thought.
From biblical archaeology to philosophy of mind, we dive into the topics that matter.
Our content bridges faith and understanding, offering insights into God's existence and the reliability of the New Testament.
Join a community where faith meets reason and discover the answers you've been seeking.
Inspiring Philosophy, where faith meets understanding.
I'm sorry, Master, but I must go all out. Just this once. I don't like you, Muhammad. Dawa boys, you've left me no choice. Bible's been corrupted, that's your go to line. But you claim the same book, prophesize your sign, twisting every scripture, faking all the quotes, hiding all the facts, trying to keep your boat afloat. Without lies, Islam dies. Perfect preservation, yeah, that myth got wrecked. Worldly Quran don't even match the text. Used to flex science, now you backing away, cause camel embryo facts don't hit the same today. Got the Islamic dilemma, you can't solve that. Every answer you give makes the problem snap back. Say the Bible's corrupt, but your own book cries. Bibles are Allah's words, they can't be revised. If Allah's words can't change, then your claims are fraud. You just argued yourself against the word of your God. In Jill's secret book, that's your mystery prize, but the Quran said Christians should judge by it. Lies, then your crew pull muted like it's just a game. Ruined the life and trashed a man's name. All that dawah talk, but when truth appears, you vanish from the chat like it hurt your ears. Without lies, Islam dies. Can't hide truth, can't spin those lies. Without lies, Islam dies. Dawah cries when the facts arise. Without lies, Islam dies. Can't hide truth, can't spin those lies. Without lies, Islam dies. Dawah cries when the facts arise. We follow Jesus better, sure in your dream. While cutting out his claims like you're cropping the meat. Crown off his head, toss his cross in the bench. The smile for the camera like you're still his kin. Jesus was a Muslim, cute little twist. Redefine the word so the facts don't exist. If labels could change what the records prove, if Pharaoh was a Yahweh fan, then Judah stayed true. Muhammad in the Song of Solomon, boy, you made your prophet a fruit. Snuggled up with Solomon and came the man of Ozu. Without lies, Islam dies. Can't hide truth, can't spin those lies. Without lies, Islam dies. Dawah cries when the facts arise. You preach perfect text, but the proof ain't there. Half wash, even your readers don't care. Call the Bible corrupt, but still quote it loud. Trying to find Muhammad just to please your crowd. Song of Solomon, yeah, that's a flesh effect. You just wrote your prophet in the Solomon's bed. Then the man of Al-Zu came riding through all night long. And you say that's true. Jesus was a Muslim, the word plays dead. By that logic, Pharaoh bowed his head. You twist, you spin, but you can't disguise that every dawah claim is built on lies. Without lies, without lies, without lies, without
TikTok time to rock, trademarked by David Wood. I'm your friendly neighborhood philosopher, trademarked by David Wood. Welcome, everyone. I have to say all that because David Wood demands we don't use his lines without saying it's been trademarked by him. He's very rude, very cruel about that kind of stuff. So,
and I'm a very litigious man who will sue you.
Yeah, well, you are also. Well, I'm a very fastidious man. See, I can make up words too, you know. That's right. That's right. Anyway, welcome, Mary. Welcome to the channel. How you doing?
I am doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Tell the audience who you are, because I don't think you've been on this channel yet.
I have not been on this channel. So I'm Mary Harb. I am most commonly found on Reason Answers because I hate running a channel on my own. But I like doing research and I like preparing things and I like reading through massive amounts of sources. And especially finding things that are peculiar or odd, and you find these reoccurring odd things, and you realize that they work like puzzle pieces putting things together. This is not an abnormal historical method that whenever you see repeated themes, you see repeated ideas, or you see places where some very hard work has been done to excuse something or explain something. You're like, why are they so concerned about this? Why are they so worried about this? Why does this need so much explanation? Mm-hmm. Then you go and you find the thread and you start pulling it, and very soon it unravels. And I have found very few things that other people have not found. A lot of the people who have found these things have been working in Arabic for years and years and years. You know, they're native Arabic speakers who have been talking about these things. It's just hard to get these things into English. For example, a lot of what I'm presenting today is stuff that Father Zachariah Boutros has been talking about for years. And I didn't even know it until after I got him. I'm like, wait a second, this. And of course, you'll find Rob Christian talking about some of these things with real sources, and all of these things put together, and you get a very clear picture of Muhammad being a very different person in the Islamic sources than what he's presented to us as.
Yeah. And given that a lot of the recent Dawa guys have been saying some pretty rude, pretty false things, I was like, well, we cannot be like that. We cannot lie, but we can tell the truth about their prophet. And so I think it's important for people to know what their prophet was like, things that were affecting him. That really should make a lot of Muslims second guess who Muhammad was. So that's what we're going to be going over today. A lot of really interesting stuff about Muhammad. And David Wood is here because he is, obviously, he loves this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I do. In fact, there's going to be some new stuff about Muhammad tomorrow, 8 p.m. on my channel.
Oh boy.
We had 2025. We made sure everyone knows about Muhammad and the night of Al-Zut. Well, we've got some other stuff. Mary is about to share a bunch of stuff that people don't know about. And then tomorrow we'll have even more.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good year. Unless you're
it's time we learn about the most perfect man that ever lived. Say that with so many air quotes because it's going to need so many. So yeah, let's dive right in here. Let's talk about Muhammad and who this man really was. The one thing that I want to really hit on tonight is that this man appears to have been demon possessed. I mean, like, let me break the ice here and just start putting up some pretty weird stuff here. So like, this is a Deeth Jai once showed me. So once the prophet was bewitched that he began to imagine he had done a thing, which in fact he had not done. How far did this go? Well, also in Sahih al-Bukhari, we have magic was worked on Allah's messenger so that he used to think that he had sexual relations with his wives. We actually had not. This is the man who is delivering revelations from Allah. He's bewitched. He's doing things that he doesn't think. He's doing things that did not happen. And this is all supposedly coming from God. Could you imagine if there was like something in the Gospels or like even the epistles of Paul? Jesus, he was bewitched by black magic and started doing things that, he did. Everyone would be using that against Christianity. You think this guy was from God? The Pharisees were right. He was casting out demons by Beelzebub. Look at that. Obviously, I don't understand how people can see this stuff and not go, wait a minute. This is supposedly the guy protected by Allah, angels like Jibril, and this is the kind of crap happening to him. What on earth is going on here?
Hey, it's wild. So you got this guy, and the Muslim sources, it's basically between 6 months and 2 years that Muhammad was all messed up and discombobulated and demon possessed and whatever you want to say. Bewitched, let's just say bewitched. So magic spell gave this guy delusional thoughts and false beliefs for somewhere between 6 months and 2 years, depending on where you go, Muslim source. But it was a while. Now, what I find wild about this is I was locked up and there was a high priest of Wicca in there. And he cast a spell on me and one of my Christian buddies. You want to know how that worked out?
Not at all.
He died. The dude died.
Oh,
Now, I'm not saying God took him out or anything. I know the spell didn't work. But anyway, somehow, if you're the greatest and final prophet of all, magic will work like a charm. Now, what's really creepy is, according to the Quran, here's the thing. According to the Quran, this stuff won't work on God's prophets, and magic, according to the Quran, is revealed by demons, by demonic forces. Magic is revealed to man, and yet I don't. So it's like it's a problem according to Islam that this guy was a victim of black magic.
Well, there are also two of the disputed surahs where some people said it should be in the Quran, some people said it shouldn't because they're prayers. Two of those disputed surahs are all about things that you recite that keep you from being affected by black magic. And Muhammad was reported to have had all of these chants and sayings that he'd say over and over and over again, obsessive and compulsively, because he shows all the signs of obsessive compulsive disorder, that he would say these things to prevent all of these things from happening to him over and over and over. There are many different ahadith about all of the things that he'd repeat 50 times a day, 100 times a day, that he would just do compulsively and obsessively, and yet he got bewitched anyway. So if we're supposed to be protected against the people who blow on knots, and Muhammad here is very much not protected, what does that say about the entire system? That the number one guy, the most powerful guy, the guy who's supposed to be the most removed from this, and this was just supposedly an ordinary Jew who managed to curse him. Now, I think that this was just part of his overall set of delusions. I don't think anybody cursed him at all.
Or an excuse. It was
an excuse.
Well, if all else fails, blame the Jew.
Right. If all else fails, blame the Jew. Why? Because he'd become impotent. And that really ties into his entire life, where he had sexual dysfunction from the beginning. And he later on just lost all ability to have intercourse at all. So he went from like impotence, could not have a child, to complete dysfunction. And that ties into your theory about al-Zut, that maybe he heard from somebody, and it was not an Arab belief that you could be injected by men's semen. In fact, the writer of Islamic homosexualities explicitly references this and says that this was not an Arab belief. However, Indians would have had this idea from the people that they traded with, and Muhammad went to Yemen where there were Indians. He might have picked up this idea and been hopeful that something like that would happen.
And they did call him the ear. They did call him the ear.
His impotence. Yeah, they did call him the ear. So he might have been trying to cure his impotence by what I think was actually happening in the desert, was him trying to do some kind of black magic encounter. And I don't think his buddy saw anything. I think he told his buddy what happened, and his buddy's like, "Oh, I totally saw it. That's totally what happened out there in the darkness."
So let me just clarify. Let me clarify some things.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Go ahead, David. And then I'll just summarize.
I just wanted to point out, because Mary's pointing out that we have some reason to think that maybe Muhammad was impotent and trying to work around that. But what if he was only impotent with women, Mary?
Gross.
Well, I would say that he would be impotent in the non-receptive capacity regardless. Let's put it that way. I do not think that what he was doing with Al-Diha involved him being the batter.
But it could have, right?
It could have, especially before he had completely lost the ability.
Could have noticed that he only gets aroused around men.
And guys, just so you know, we're not like making stuff up. Mary's getting this stuff from Islamic sources. Islamic sources discuss everything we're going to discuss tonight comes from things like this. And just to hit back on this whole black magic stuff, let's remember what the Quran says. For example, it says, "Indeed, Allah defends those who believe. Surely Allah does not like whoever is deceitful and ungrateful." So Allah will defend them. But also remember what it said in Surah 2. Okay. Okay. Although their magic could not harm anyone except by Allah's will. So this is talking about the devil's magic. Okay. The demons. Okay. That magic cannot harm anyone except Allah's will. So what is going on in these verses here, in these hadith here? This was Allah's will. Allah willed for Muhammad to get bewitched to the point that he started thinking he was doing things. He started to think that he was doing things that were not actually there. Now, just take that a step further. Like, if that's the case, okay, how do you know his revelations are not just coming from demons directly? How do you know that he's not just making things up in his head and he's thinking he's delivering revelations when he isn't? These are concerning things for supposedly the final prophet, the guy who's going to deliver the final revelations from Allah. But Allah's willing that he is affected by black magic to the point where he is now acting insane. This is some crazy stuff. I don't know what to do with this.
Someone else said, talking about, remember that Muhammad was running around to every one of his wives, claiming that he was having sex with them all. But at the same time, we have these hadith that say that he wasn't having intercourse with any of his wives, and he thought he was. These were happening at the same time. At the time he was running from room to room to room, from house to house to house, he was telling each of his wives, oh, I'm too tired to be with you. I had sex with everybody else. And he thought that the shame of not being the chosen one would keep women from talking, because apparently he knows nothing about women. Because, of course, what happened after a few nights, you know, some of his wives who were buddies with each other would go, hey, you know, he hasn't been anything with me. He hasn't been doing anything with me either. And they'd kind of talk amongst themselves for a while. And then they'd reach out to the wives they don't like quite so much. And then eventually they just reach out to their enemies, and they'd be like, you know, Aisha would be like, hey, I'm Salama, who is the leader of the rival sect, because Allah's prayer to take away her jealousy or Muhammad's prayer to take away her jealousy was entirely ineffective, which caused the Sunni Shia split, that Allah did not listen to Muhammad's prayer, even though Muhammad said he would.
Just know, Mary, when we're covering a lot of this stuff, the audience might need a little bit more details filled in here on some of these stories you're bringing up. They may not know all this kind of stuff. So just keep that in mind as we go through this, because there's a lot of context here that we don't know have time to really explain. Yeah. So where do you want to start in terms of this? What do we want to talk? Because Muhammad was a weird dude. You know, that's what we want to hit on here. I mean, if you look at the stream that we. Let's start with his childhood. But if you check out the stream we just did on God Logic's channel, this guy was doing weird stuff to little boys at the mosque. He would go to the mosque covered in semen. As we know, he had a child bride, Aisha, that he married at 6, consummated the marriage at 9. He thought he was bewitched by black magic. He delivered, as we know, the satanic verses. These are verses that were taken out of the Quran. And this is in Al-Tabari, that he admitted, that Muslim sources admitted were apparently from Satan. So he's getting revelations from the devil after he's already being bewitched. After, again, remember when Muhammad first received his revelations, he was the only eyewitness to what happened, and he thought it was a demon. And then people later convinced him, no, it was an angel that appeared to you. So this was a weird dude doing weird stuff, meddling with black magic and demonic stuff. What we want to talk about tonight with Mary is how we got to this point with all this really weird stuff. Who was this guy that Muslims say was the most perfect man ever? I mean, just the stuff we've already covered in the first 20 minutes should really make you doubt that. But let's go back to the childhood and talk about some of that stuff. What led to all this nonsense?
Right. So whenever you start out with weird things that everyone around him thought was demonic happening with Muhammad, the first incident was when he was only 4 years old. He had been taken out into the wilderness, and a woman had been paid to raise him because his grandfather did not want to pay his supposed grandfather did not want to pay his mother a single red cent to take care of him. And so he hired a Bedouin woman to take care of him, not only to nurse him, but to keep him afterwards, which was not usual. Usually you'd return the child to a family member as soon as the child was weaned, even if you could not provide milk yourself. But he kept paying her and was going to keep paying her however long she'd keep him. But when he turned 4 years old, something happened. He was on the ground. Weird things were happening. It freaked out the foster mother, and foster mother dragged him straight back, dumped him on Amina. Now, in the Islamic sources, we have the story inserted where, oh, she saw angels coming and washing his heart. There's a big problem with that, though. This is not a story that's original to Islam. This story is, first of all, stolen from Manichaeism, which Mani had this supposedly happen to him to introduce him into prophethood. So that's the first problem. It's a stolen story. The second problem is that this story is reused multiple times in the Islamic narrative.
Do you have the source on this? Sources on these?
So that is in Ibn Ishaq, and it is in his childhood. I can't talk and pull it up at the same time, but it's right after his birth. It's a very short section, and then when she brings him back, we still have preserved in the sources their conversation. The conversation is not, I saw an angel wash his heart. No, the conversation is his mother saying, oh, you think he's demon possessed, right? And the woman who is taking care of him going, basically, yeah, I don't want anything to do with him now, and dumping him on her. So we still have this conversation preserved where the conclusion from whatever happened was that Muhammad had a demon. And he grew up his childhood as being an odd one out for any number of reasons. And when his supposed introduction into prophethood, the hadith about this in the major collections of Sunnah, they all say that the beginning of the revelation, and actually the word that we translate as revelation doesn't even mean that. It means secret communication. If I whisper something to someone, that's wahi in its generic sense. So the beginning of the secret communication between Allah to
I think I found
Muhammad.
This is an Ibn Ishaq right here. When she asked if I had feared a demon possessed him, I replied that I did. She answered that no demon had any power over her son, who had a great future before him. So she told how she was pregnant with him. A light went out from her, which illuminated the castle of Basra in Syria, and that she had borne him with the least difficulty imaginable. When she bore him, he put his hands on the ground, lifting his head towards the heavens. Leave him then and go in peace, she said. So it seems as though people were suspicious of demonic possession early on here.
Right. So Amina asks, do you think he's possessed by a demon? So supposedly she tells him this lovely story, and then she's like, oh, do you think she's possessed with the demon? And then the nursing woman goes, yeah, I do. And then supposedly she goes, no, because when I had him, a light shone out of my vagina into the world. And by the way, Ibn Sa'd does specify how the light shined from her, which was she had the baby dropped to the ground because there was no midwife, just bloop. She had no midwife. And wait a minute. Muhammad was dropped on his head as a baby? Yes. That's why it says when she bore him, he put his hands on the ground. So it's supposed to be like he saves himself from hitting his head and does salat instead.
Let me pull that back up. Hold up. I'm going to put that back up here. This is okay. This is wild stuff here. Okay. Yes, there it is. When she bore him, he put his hands on the ground, lifting his head towards the heavens.
Yes. And if you go to Ibn Sa'd, it specifies basically that he's like goes to the ground when she bears, then she gives birth to him. He falls to the ground, but he falls to the ground in a position of prayer, and so does not hit his head. Definitely does not hit his head.
That sounds like he hit his head, and they're just
it sounds like his head. Well, what's really interesting is that the responsibility for paying for a midwife lies with the family of the father of the child. Why did she have no midwife? Because the family to whom she ascribed the child refused to pay for one, and she refused to pay for one herself because that might be taken as an admission that she wasn't really serious. So she had the child without a midwife instead in order to emphasize her argument that no, this really does belong to your family, even though the child was born 4 years after Abdullah died, who was Amina's husband, supposedly Muhammad's father. And we find that Muhammad likes to make all the prophets imitate him in some way. That he tries to act like his life is like the lives of all these prophets. And we find in the Quran that the story about Mary giving birth is taken from the Proto-Evangelium of James, but which has a big section in there about the midwife, but it steals the midwife out of the story. It takes away the midwife. Why? Because Muhammad's mom didn't have a midwife, so he wanted to make Jesus more like him, so he stole the midwife, and then he imported a pagan story of Leto giving birth on the island of Delos to Apollo and made that Jesus's birth story. So it's quite interesting stuff there. All of these things that point to various problems in his childhood.
Well, let's do some super chats and then let's talk about Muhammad's mom, because you got some interesting data on her. Let me know when you want to share your screen, by the way. But let me jump into some super chats here. Dawa Troll says, hello, beautiful people. Thought it would be funny to have a parody of the Three Stooges, but it's the three shakes. Shake Logic, Shake It Off, and Shake Your Booty. Oh, yeah. Logic, yeah. Myself and AP should do that at some point. Something like that. You're muted, David.
Oh, no, that would be funny if you guys did it. If you guys did it like the Three Stooges, but it's you three guys.
You gotta we gotta do a script. You can direct, David, and then we'll do something like that. And so, I don't know. That's something I gotta churn on.
That could also be like a recurring show.
It could be a recurring, yeah. I got another reoccurring thing I want to do that I'm working on, like a parody. I'm working on the script for it right now. It's gonna be. I'm not gonna tell anybody, but I thought about another thing I can do on Islam, parroting something that, a popular thing that happens on YouTube, and just doing like something like that. I'm working on that right now. I'm getting the script together. But yeah, this might be also something we could do. We could do this like repeated, like Boom Boom Room skits or something like this. If the three of us got together, David showed up and directed us, because putting his, his comedy genius mind to work, coming up with stuff, we could do something like that. Fabric starch for sale. Don't ask about the ingredients. What on earth is going on here?
That's gross. And they're talking about Muhammad's special starch that made his garments extra stiff.
Well, don't forget that Islam is the cleanest of all religions, and that is why Aisha used the marks. Muhammad would splash water on his hands, and then after, when they were covered in semen, and then wipe them on the walls to do a double cleansing, one with water and one with dust. And she would show people as a tourist attraction the mark of the semen stains on her mud walls of her house. That was a Medinan early tourist attraction during her life.
Hey, Mary.
For those who don't know, let me put that up there for people. Yeah, this is an actual hadith right here. Again, everything we're taking comes from the Muslim sources, guys.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Mary, you once constructed a replica of such a 7th century Arab room. We could do a little skit where CSI goes in there and flashes those lights on the walls, and like the whole room is glowing. The whole room is glowing from Muhammad wiping his whatever all over the walls.
Yeah.
Perfect man, guys. Perfect man.
Gross man, the grossest man ever.
Yeah, she controlled both his grave site and his semen stains. So you could come and you could see his grave and you could see his semen. That was part of your Medinan tour. Wouldn't everybody love to see that from their prophet?
Yes, us Christians, we like to go, we like to visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and things like that. And early Muslims, they're like, let me go to the house and see Muhammad's semen stains all over the wall. Oh, Allahu Akbar.
And guys, for those who don't know, here's the context. Sahih al-Bukhari 230. I asked Aisha about the clothes soiled with semen. She replied, I used to wash it off the clothes of Allah's messenger as he would go to prayer. And water spots were still visible.
Wash it off, scrape it off, scratch it off. It was just an ongoing issue.
Yeah, she'd miss a bunch. So later they would dry, and then if she got it while it was still wet, she'd wash it. But if it dried, then she'd scratch it off with her fingernail. So that meant he was walking around without it even scratched off for a certain period of time before she went, man, Muhammad, you have even more semen on you. Here, let me take care of that.
Yeah, not someone you want to hug it out with at the mosque. But I have to say, Mary, if your theory about Muhammad being impotent is correct, I mean, how do you possibly explain where all this endless semen was coming from? Yeah,
So
solve that mystery.
Yeah. So he did have certain friends like Dihya al-Kalbi, and his wives would catch him with this man, and he would go, oh, that's just Jibril. He's taken the form of the most handsome man in Medina. That's just a chance that you caught me with him in private with the most handsome man that everybody thought was super, super beautiful. Because who else's form would Jibril take but a super hot man?
And guys, just so you know, we're not saying this stuff just to ha Muhammad. That's not what this is about. Muslims say one of the reasons that Islam is true is Muhammad was the most perfect man who ever lived. All we're doing is going through the Islamic sources and going, does this look like the most perfect man ever? Does this look like somebody who is mentally sane or somebody who has all sorts of mental troubles, who seriously you should not trust? Again, if you want to get Muslims out of Islam, you have to attack the root. You have to attack the foundation and start tearing it apart so Muslims see how bad he was, how messed up he was. So this is not just ha Muhammad. This is so Muslims see this stuff. They know how bad he was, and that it gets them to start questioning Islam. That's what we want. So this is not just, well, let's make fun of it all. This is us going over what the data shows so people realize what's going on in their religion.
And to be clear, if Muhammad, just one thing that we're talking about, if Muhammad is illegitimate, this disproves Islam in 5 distinct ways. In fact, just the teaching that women can be pregnant for multiple years, which is normative in Islam, which is embraced in Islam, disproves Islam. So why does that disprove Islam? Well, Islam was supposed to come and bring a deen with it. It was supposed to bring Sharia, a way, a path, its own pattern for its ummah, which was ordained by Allah. Allah has provided this way for people and has provided enlightenment and truth and a way to find truth. If Muhammad, and a big part of this is regulating family. Allah abolished abortion. He said, or abortion. No, you can abort kids. He abolished adoption. He said who could inherit from whom. He said what child counts as whose. He said how much people should inherit, what counts as divorce, when people can be divorced, how long you have to wait between divorces, all of these things to regulate the family. That is a key part of the deen that Allah provided. Muhammad, however, did not have divine knowledge that informed him that women can't be pregnant for multiple years, and so did not put that into Islam. Instead, he followed the pagan belief that women could be pregnant for multiple years and didn't address it because he just assumed that they could. If you don't have a period, then you're still pregnant, right? Unless you're absolutely certain that you're now in menopause. So since he was not getting correct information from Allah that could regulate society in an accurate way, this can't possibly be from God, since the regulation of society is a big part of Islam. Secondly, Muhammad claims that his prophethood is supported by his own reputation for honesty among his fellow Qurayshis. There are 3 claims that Muhammad makes about why you should believe him. 1, because he's bringing the same thing that the other scriptures had, which he doesn't. 2, that he's predicted in the other scriptures, which he isn't, because he says how he's predicted. And then 3, that he's super, super honest. But these same people judged as super, super honest the women who were saying they were pregnant for 4 or 5 or 6 years. So honesty means nothing if you can't tell that a woman who says she was pregnant for 6 years is a liar. Then 5, the entire system of Isnad. Isnad relies on the reputation of reliability.
Guys, what is not, hold on. But again, a lot of people don't know a lot of this stuff, the context you're bringing up. So let me just add in. Isnad refers to the chains of the hadith. Anytime you have a hadith, it's like, Muhammad told this companion who told it to so-and-so, told so-and-so, told so-and-so, eventually written down about Sahih al-Bukhari, that kind of stuff. So that's what Isnad chain is there, that kind of stuff. So
And it's not just the hadith, the Quran itself is supposed to be verified by the people who recited it, not by the fact that it's written, not by the fact that it's preserved in the manuscripts, but by this chain of reciters, and that they are also super honest. This same methodology was used in the judgment of women who said that they were pregnant 2, 4, 6, 8 years, and they were found to be honest and true. So the entire methodology for verifying the Quran itself and all the ahadith, which modify the Quran and overrule it at times and shape how you live your life, all of it is based on a system that can't tell that women who say that they were pregnant for 6 years are actually liars. There are 2 other reasons about Muhammad specifically. He's supposed to come from Ishmael, but if his mother was pregnant for 4 years, goodness knows who his father was, and that he was supposed to come from the best of the people, the Arabs, the best of the tribes, the Quraysh, the best of the families, the Hashemites. And again, if his father's unknown, then that's nonsense too.
Let's get to some more super chats here. Anyone else see God Logic's debate with Dr. Abdul? I did not watch it yet. I will try to take a look. Love seeing the dynamic of autism and psychopathy here between IP and David Wood. What do you mean? How am I the autistic one here? You must be just talking about David Wood himself. I assure you, I am not autistic. You know how I know? My parents checked and I wasn't. Okay. So
you're definitely on the spectrum, buddy. You're on the spectrum. I did want to point out a cool comment. So Mary said that if a woman didn't have a period, they would just assume that she's pregnant. And then so someone said, so Aisha was pregnant for 9 years, according to Islam. That was from Weigel.
Nice.
Well, I have to say way beyond 9 years, because it was several more years past. It's Muslims who claim that she started menstruating at 9 and so on. She didn't start menstruating for several years beyond that. So she was, she was pregnant from the time she was born until she was in her mid-teens.
Yeah, she was about 14 when she finally menstruated.
Yeah, it seems to be that from what I've seen, especially with the playing of dolls. Momo was a jagoff. That's true. He definitely was, as we like to say in Pittsburgh. So I'm really, really glad you said that. Sauda, wait, he said he plowed all 11 fields every night. Well, not me. You too, Mary the cop. Momo. I wasn't lying. He was a Jew. Very true. Very true. Yes.
That's
absolutely.
precisely it.
Yep. 3 of my favorites on the panel. Love to see Mary. She's a killer in these panels. God bless. Absolutely. She's got a lot of knowledge here. Do you think the initial spread of Islam and its current popularity is what Revelation is referring to when it mentions that Satan will be loose to deceive the nations again for a while? I think that's part of it. I don't think that's the only thing. Satan's going to deceive in multiple ways to really just throw a lot of confusion in there. So I think that's going to be part of it for sure. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Pastate of Allah says Mo was really into men. There was the Al-Zut, Diha Al-Kabi, maybe the one whose side was kissed by the Prophet of Islam in Sunan Abu Dawood 5224. The wives were for compensation. Here I stand. She's thrown down the challenge, guys.
Well, how many little boys are you promised in heaven compared to little girls? Because, of course, all the Houris, they are not fully through puberty. They're described as standard stage. So they're little girls, but you also get a bunch of little boys. You get thousands of boys and only dozens of women. So, you know.
That's creepy, man. Yeah, and like, I remember reading about the weird poetry of later Muslims. Like, they were really into that kind of stuff. It's weird the way they talked about boys. Like, it's creepy. It's like, dude, messed up stuff.
It's not just the poetry. Yeah, and one of the major tafsir, there is a passage that's talking where they're defining the word canopy bed because some people didn't know what it meant. And they're saying that when you are lying on the canopy bed with a wife or a boy, you will look up and see a wife that you have not seen before who is waiting to have intercourse with you. In that narration, you are having sex with either a wife or one of those boys.
This is Islamic heaven, guys. Islamic heaven. This is what the scholars say. All right, let's get back to this. So what do you want to go into? You want to talk about Muhammad's early life here. You've given me this to put up here. So what do you want to go in this direction here?
So there are a bunch of things that are recorded in the historical sources that try to rescue Muhammad from the doubts that everyone had about him, from the rumors that everyone had. People called him the son of Abu Kabsha, who was a slave of his mother. They're basically saying, oh, you're just a byblow of a slave. They called him a palm tree on a hill because you don't know whose parent a palm tree is. You know, the seed just falls and then it sprouts. And he was called the same thing. And he worked very hard to polish his reputation as being truly from the Quraysh. But we have lots of data that shows that he wasn't. We have that his grandfather refused to pay for a midwife to tend to Amina when she was in labor. Why? Because he didn't believe that that was his kid. We have this event where in the Islamic sources, his grandfather stands before Hubal, who is called Allah. In these early sources, he'll stand in front of Hubal and go, oh, Allah. And he does divination 2 other times. And the 3rd time when he stands in front of Hubal, he's staying in front of Hubal with Muhammad. Just before this, we find out that the reason why babies were presented to Hubal was to do paternity divination, to see if whether or not you're the father. And apparently it came up, he got lucky. It came up that Muhammad truly was somehow in Amina's womb for 4 years, according to pagan divination.
Wait a minute. So this is in the Islamic sources that Muhammad's mom was pregnant for 4 years?
Yes. So Muhammad's mother was pregnant for 4 years.
What? But that's impossible.
Well, not according to Islam. Not according to Islam. And again,
continue. I got a pace.
Yeah, disproves Islam in 5 ways if it is true that she was pregnant for 4 years. So what proves this is there is a birth gap in the sources. First of all, there is an emphasis in the Islamic sources that Muhammad's mother conceived almost instant, like on the wedding night or right after. Muhammad's father only spent 3 days with Muhammad's mother when they married and never gave her a house, never provided her a house. And then 3 months later, he is dead in the Islamic sources. And I can switch to a different window and you can see some of those sources really quickly.
So wait, what are the sources for this stuff really?
So Ibn Sa'd is a major one. So is Ibn Ishaq is also a major one.
I saw Al-Tabari. You mentioned that on the slide as well.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and bring up very quickly. We won't read through it all because it is, there's just massive amounts of information about this.
So, I mean, well, first of all, obviously Muhammad's mom was not pregnant for 4 years. That's impossible. So I guess they're trying to make his father someone who wasn't his father.
Yes. So his father and his mother got married. His father and his mother got married on the same night that Abdul Muttalib, his grandfather, did marry her cousin. Her cousin got pregnant with Muhammad's uncle. I know everybody's related, right? So her cousin got pregnant with Muhammad's uncle and was still pregnant with him when Abdullah died. His father died 3 months later. 4 years after her cousin gave birth, Muhammad was born. So we have this 4.5-year minimum gap between Abdullah's death and Muhammad's birth that you have to contend with in the sources. It works out to 4.5 years minimum between the time that his dad died and the time that he was born. And these are sources that are accepted by early Islamic scholars. They're like, yeah, this gap really was real. Yeah, it is accepted that Abdullah died approximately 3 months after they were married. There's a huge number of ahadith about how Muhammad had a glow about him, and then he went in for his wedding night with Amina, and the glow went in, or Abdullah had this glow, and he went into his wedding night, and this glow went into Amina instead, meaning that the Islamic sources put the conception at the beginning of their marriage. Which again,
I just
nearly 5 years later.
I just Googled Muhammad in gestation for 4 years. And yeah, I'm getting web pages. So I Googled, was Muhammad in gestation for 4 years? And I'm getting web pages where, yeah, Muslims are trying to address this. And just my quick survey goes, this is pretty bad. This is them just coping. But I mean, like, yeah, this seems to be a problem in the Muslim sources.
Yeah. And again, the Muslim sources emphasize that Amina got pregnant basically on her wedding night. At most 2 days after. In the Islamic sources, Amina did not give birth until 4 years and 9 months approximately after that time, when she supposedly was inseminated with Muhammad's seed, right? And because of, obviously even though the Quraysh accepted that this was possible, they generally doubted it. It was a general, I need some good evidence. And
I can't imagine why.
I know, right? So Amina goes to Abdullah's father, supposedly Muhammad's grandfather, and says, hey, I'm pregnant with your son's child. You need to support me. And he goes, no, you're not. No, I won't. She gives birth, what? Alone without a midwife, because what does he do? He doesn't provide one. She never nurses Muhammad, because in the pagan Arab and also the Islamic system, because Islam takes pagan law and hits it with a monotheism stick until it cries. In the pagan and Islamic system, women are owed compensation for nursing a child for a man. And so when the baby was born and he dropped to the ground between her legs, she was going to let him die. And Abu Lahab who was another one of Abdul Muttalib's sons, and so half-brother of the father of Muhammad, actually believed her and sent his slave who was lactating in to save the child's life. Well, now Abdul Muttalib has a problem. Grandpa has a problem because one of his sons is like, yeah, this kid belongs in our family. So he's like, fine, I will take him before Hubal Allah. And in the Islamic sources, it still says that he goes in front of Hubal Allah, and then he's just supposedly thanking him for the child. But what we actually find just right before that in Ibn Ishaq is that a major role of Hubal was in divination. Every other time that Abdul Muttalib is standing in front of Hubal, he's doing divination. And yet this time he's just supposed to be saying, oh, thank you. But paternity divination is a special interest, a special feature of what Hubal does. And after this, he gives the child a name. But he refuses to give the child a family name. So Qutham was a family name. People say, well, Muhammad's name was really Qutham. No, Amina would have wanted to name him Qutham to verify that he is from this family. And Al-Abbas later named one of his own sons Qutham, the family name. But his father is like, no, I'm not giving him a family name. I'm going to name him Muhammad, which is a name that was used in the area. It was a name in use among pagans, but it was not used by the Quraysh. And the Quraysh were like, why won't you give him a family name? This is in the sources. Why are you not giving him a name that we have ever used? He's like, oh, but it's an honorable name. But what's he saying? This isn't our kid.
Yeah, that would be the implication. But I just Googled it. Yeah, it looks like they're like, for example, the Shafi opinion. It talks about like pregnancies lasting 4 years, other durations 3, 5, 6, 7 years, 1 year, not like this is some wild stuff you're getting from these. Who believes this crap? Like that you can have pregnancies lasting years. That's just not biologically possible.
So up until the 20th century, this was a belief that affected Islamic law in many places. There are a number of writings from people in North Africa, from Westerners in North Africa, talking about this idea that fetuses will go to sleep if they suffer some kind of shock or something, and might even sleep for an indefinite period of time. Then they wake up and get out of hibernation and continue to develop and are born.
You could get away with so much apparently in the Islamic world. Like, no, I was not sleeping around. I've just been pregnant for 7 years, guys. I mean, obviously.
And this was normative, especially in North Africa. It heavily affected Islamic law. And there was a hibernating fetus, like,
for the winter.
Law. It was
sometimes the fetuses out here, they like to go in and hibernate for the winter, and they come back out and start growing again in the springtime. Don't leave any food out. The fetuses might get them. Yeah.
And so, like, and again, what leads to this? The Islamic methodology leads to these conclusions, which are ridiculous. So is this from God?
This is where sleeper cells come from, as this comment puts out.
Nice.
This is where this whole idea comes from. So that's what's going on. They're just doing the same thing they were doing in the womb, guys. That's all it was. The sleeper cells are in there. So let me share your screen here. So what do we got here?
Okay, so this gives the entirety of the narrative. You can find this on MohammedMythAndFact.com. This gives the entirety of all the evidence.
Can you zoom in a little bit there?
Let's do that.
There we go. Yeah.
So here are the data points that show that these events are really do indicate this difference in age. I also have on here the a whole bunch of sources and stories about how we trust these women to tell us about how women can be pregnant for many years, 3 years, 4 years. Here are some other evidences. There's material here about the North Africa sleeping fetus theory and all of these things, and that it is part of Islamic law. Why? Because it's a system that Allah gave the people. Allah gave the people a system that leads to this. So this is based on Islamic principles that they come to these conclusions. There are also a lot of corroborating Islamic sources that point to Muhammad being that, Amina, she didn't appear pregnant. We talked about the mother not being supported, refusing to pay for a midwife. Amina never nursing her child. The pagan paternity divination and all of the evidence for this. Muhammad being denied a family name. And then he was given a last pick wet nurse too. According to our own testimony, the wet nurse was one that everyone else had rejected. And Abdul Muttalib is like, yes, this woman who doesn't look like she has much milk, let's have her feed this child. Why? Hoping that he dies out in the desert. That she was continued to pay, and that he had a very low status in his grandfather's household. By that slightly older uncle who was like 4 years older, named Hamza. One time he got drunk when he was Muhammad's follower and chopped up a bunch of camels with a sword. And Muhammad went to fuss at him, and he said, he's really drunk. And he's like, you're just a slave who was in my father's house. Talking about his position among the Hashemites, according to Abdul Muttalib. And there are all these sources that are try to make Muhammad into being this special person. But then we have the drunken testimony when sometimes you say things you wouldn't say when sober, even though they're true, that he was considered to be the level of a slave. He had no inheritance. People considered him to be illegitimate. The people who opposed him constantly called him a bastard. That was their number one insult. And he didn't inherit anything from his father. There is also, unfortunately, the story of his treatment as a youth and the likelihood that he was sexually molested. We have a very slight piece of evidence that, and this isn't on here, but we have a very slight piece of evidence that his grandfather might have done this because...
Well, I mean, we were just live with God Logic, I think Friday, and Rob Christian showed some hadith that showed that his cousins may have done some stuff to him as well. I mean, like, he put the hadith on the screen. It was there. Like,
yes.
his family members did some bad things to this poor kid. You kind of feel bad for Muhammad and the way he turned out, given like what the things that were happening to him, and it explains why he was so messed up.
Yes, and Sufyan, he was the one who, it says in the hadith that he raped him. That's a normal meaning. Like, we can use the word rape to mean other things other than a literal rape, but the main meaning of the word is sexual degradation and rape. It's sexual. That's its normative meaning. And I can actually show that. I can go to the dictionary right now. Here, let me go ahead and give you guys the dictionary of this. I've clipped it for people to see.
Here we go.
Here is the meaning of this word, which is often translated as dishonorable or dishonor me or whatever, because they don't want to. The normal meaning: rape, indecent assault, rape, ravishment, violation. Only by extension is it violation in other senses. To violate, to rape, to ravish, to violate, immoral offense. So Muhammad's saying that I don't want to be kind to this cousin as he's coming to him begging for his life. Why? Because he used to rape me. We also have evidence that Abu Talib had a strong preference for boys. When the Quraysh were trying to get, so when Muhammad's grandfather died, two of Muhammad's uncles asked to be Muhammad's guardian. One of them was Abu Lahab, who was the one who had saved his life and cared about him. The other one was Abu Talib, who had very distinct and well-known sexual preferences. Abdul Muttalib chose the sexual predator and gave Muhammad to him. When Abu Talib was trying to be induced to leave Muhammad and to not give Muhammad support, leave him alone, just let us throw him out, let us get rid of him. We will give you the most beautiful boy if you will do this. That is a promise also, in Ibn Ishaq.
Here's also the thing that Rob Christian brought up about this stuff. It was narrated that this Copt, raped him. There's the source, guys. This is some bad stuff happening to him. Now, that doesn't excuse all the evil Muhammad did, but it does provide some context into why you shouldn't trust this guy. This is somebody who needed help, not somebody who was ready to help the world.
Right.
Some pretty wild stuff.
So this word is used in the Islamic sources for sexual assault. And he's like, I don't want to be nice to this guy. He used to assault me. So his uncle was promised the most beautiful boy if he would just leave Muhammad. And in the sources, they go, to be your son. He already had 4 kids at this point. And at this point, he could not, 4 sons. He had other kids. He could not even financially support them. So 2 of them have been adopted by other people because he couldn't financially support them. He didn't need pretty boys to be his son. He's being offered a pretty boy for his other desires. We also have the fact that they need to make an excuse for the fact that Muhammad accompanied the caravan when he was underage. Trading caravans were accompanied by warriors. You needed people who could fight. You didn't need a little boy. There is still a tradition in Pakistan of caravan wives, and truckers have caravan wives now. They have a young boy who accompanies them for their sexual release. And so the whole thing, Abu Talib just couldn't stand to have him out of his sight. What does that really mean? He was not an honored person. He was not in an honored position. Abu Talib refused to marry him to his own daughter. He said, a noble's for a noble. I'm marrying her to someone else. When Muhammad asked, he did not regard him highly. Why is he taking him as a young boy on a caravan if not for this?
Yeah. That's some wild stuff. He was clearly not someone molested. He probably was molested a lot as a kid. And this is coming, guys, this is not stuff we're making up. This is coming from the Islamic sources. Like this guy, this messes with kids' brains too. Like this kind of stuff messes with brains. And if like, so like you could be like, well, yeah, maybe he was okay. No. That's not how this works. If you go into all the research, all the health consequences, this stuff, it will destroy their brains. Absolutely. And I can actually show you real quick here just by putting up a source that shows all this. Where is it? Yeah, there was an umbrella study done. Now, an umbrella study looks at multiple meta-analyses. And you just see all the psychiatric problems that come from this kind of stuff. So, like, again, what is coming out? Strong psychiatric association with childhood SA reported for conversion disorders, borderline personality disorder, anxiety, depression. I mean, all sorts of physical, mental. I mean, like this is the kind of stuff that comes from this when you're doing this to children. This was being done to Muhammad. He was mentally unstable. That's just what the data would indicate.
And when you go to the book Islamic Homosexuality, you can find this in lots of other sources too. I find this one of the most helpful ones because it lays it out the most explicitly and explains everything. When a boy is targeted within the Arab culture, he isn't just molested by one person. It becomes known that he is the boy that you go to. So it would have been his youth cohort would have abused him. If it not just be just his cousin might have initiated it. That would be why he would be very resentful toward him. But it would be the entire youth cohort. They would single out one boy and abuse him in that way. The number one targets are fatherless children and much younger sons. So the youngest sons and the fatherless children are targeted by older boys, and they cannot refuse until they get old enough basically to start fighting them off. And there's also this terror that once you are used in this way, because physical actions cause physiological responses. So even though it was not something that the child sought out, the child can feel physiological pleasure. And that messes with their brain even more, because then they go, well, maybe this is what I'm for. Maybe this is what my destiny is. Maybe I'm not even a real man. And there's this terror of becoming addicted is kind of how they view it. And so Muhammad's trying to overcome this childhood where he was the slave of his grandfather's house, where he was abused by the boys. He wants recognition. He wants respect, which is something he has never gotten. And he is desperate for respect. So he's like, well, where can I get it? I can get it through religion. So I'm going to do all of these weird practices. He's already had some weird seizure-y stuff before. So he's going off into caves. Now, Mike, when you worship Yahweh, you worship him, most commonly it's associated with mountains. And you're only supposed to go to one particular mountain, right? During the time of Israel in the tabernacle, or wherever the tabernacle is, and later
Mount Zion,
right? What would you be seeking out in a cave if you were going to a cave for a spiritual experience?
Depends on the culture. I mean,
not necessarily demonic, but it would be in the culture. It would be an infernal, a ground type of interaction. So he's going to this cave, and when he gets there, again, the Islamic sources say all of his early experiences were sleep paralysis demons. They were true dreams. He was asleep, and as he is asleep, he feels a huge heavy weight on him. He can't move. He can't clearly, distinctly see what it is, and he hears a voice saying ominous and scary things.
Yeah.
Every ancient person would go, I know what that is. That's the demon. So Muhammad runs out, and what does he say?
Yeah. And David, you can comment on this. When Muhammad first received his revelation in the cave, he didn't think it was an angel.
No, and I mean, based on the stuff that, Mary points out, you have to wonder exactly whatever that thing did to him in that cave. But no, Muhammad's first impression of his revelations was that it was some sort of a demonic spirit or some poetry demon or something like that. And he tried to end himself, and that didn't work. It stopped him, and he ran home to his wife, and her cousin convinced him that he was a prophet. But you know what they say, sometimes your first impression is the correct one.
Yeah.
And you just have to say, I mean, if you notice, like, biblically, an angel shows up, people hit the deck. Well, you don't know if that angel's there for judgment or something like that. And that's when the angel would say, hey, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I'm not here. I'm not here to destroy you. Muhammad thinks he was like a demon was messing with him
the whole time. There's no, do not be afraid. He's running in fear continuously, doesn't know what this is, and someone else convinces him that it's okay. But even if you go to his wife's cousin, who supposedly is a super knowledgeable guy, he has apparently been practicing automatic writing, according to the sources, himself, because he is writing as much of the Injil as Allah wills him to write. So he's doing some sort of weird possessed writing thing. And he does not talk about Jibreel in the text. It's usually mistranslated. When it says namus, which means law, he's saying, oh, you're getting a law of Moses, just like Moses, you're getting a law just like Moses does, is what Waraka actually says, according to Muhammad 20 years later. Let's be clear. According to Muhammad,
this is
20 years later.
For those who want to know, this is after Muhammad had his encounter with that thing in the cave. He went to some Christian monk named Waraka, and Waraka was one of the guys that convinced him that he might be a prophet like Moses. And what did Waraka know? He wasn't in the cave.
No, he wasn't. First of all, he wasn't in the cave.
Come on, Waraka.
Doesn't seem much like a Christian because he's doing automatic writing. He's like possessed by something and doing writing and writing things out. And third, he never even talks about Jibreel, and it's to Waraka that the sources go to say, yes, this is Jibreel. Yes, he knows that this is Jibreel. He never says this is Jibreel. He never talks about any angel in the hadith about this. He says the law of Moses is coming to you. He says nothing about an angel. Not there, which is even more interesting. He never validates that this is a true angel in those sources.
Speaking of that, idea for the Boom Boom Room, Muhammad accuses Mary Harb of conspiracy theory. Yeah, I should bring a lot of that research up in the Boom Boom Room and have you guys talk about it. It might be interesting. I've studied the sources and discovered Muhammad's father was named Widman. Widman. Now we can call him by his full name. Muhammad Widman.
Withman, see.
So did a moped come from a coral lizard? Something. Some lizards were bothering him somehow, it looks like.
Hey, just so you know, man, that moped, that's a fun new nickname for Muhammad, because they all were riding their moped. Get it? Ped. Get it? Ped.
It's got a double meaning because he was a pedo, with Aisha, so it works there too, So.
Mm-hmm.
Easter reminded me of how amazing, loving, and gracious the Son of God is we serve. One topic Muslims will never debate is on the morality of Jesus and Momo, because deep inside they are embarrassed. Absolutely. They will never do that. They know they can't win that debate. Momo is not the most perfect man. He was absolutely horrible.
But by the way, little side note, because you guys are both talking about how messed up Muhammad is, and IP, you pointed out, it's like, hey, this isn't just us randomly making fun of Muhammad. The Quran says this guy is the pattern of conduct, so he has Allah's stamp of approval. But Muslims have also used this as an argument for why we should believe in him. His character is so. I have Muslim apologetics books on my shelves that just go page after page after page about how his character was so perfect that you cannot question his integrity, and anyone with a character this perfect has to be speaking the truth. And so if this guy says he's a prophet, by golly, he must be a prophet. But they don't talk about any of this stuff or any of the stuff we normally talk about. It's all just it's all missing from these apologetics, books. But I mean, like, seriously, like, think about it. This guy's the pattern of conduct, and his character is some sort of confirmation that he's a prophet. And you look at the stuff that he's done, and he's the most screwed up person you've ever seen in your entire life.
And And to be clear, this thing where he was like squeezed in a cave, this comes after an introduction that basically says this was the normative pattern for his early revelations, that he had these dreams that were truth. And that's like, and then here's the first one. So he was having these reoccurring sleep paralysis, nightmare, demon experiences. Wow. And was consistently interpreting them as divine. We have another, whenever he finds out, you read all about him being bewitched. Well, the moment when he supposedly finds out the truth about being bewitched, it's described as another sleep paralysis dream. He's lying there and there's a man out of sight at his head and another man that he interprets as an angel out of sight at his feet, and they're talking around him and he can't move, and they're like, oh, he's bewitched. So he's having a second sleep paralysis type of experience. And I really think that Al-Zut actually happened in his dreams, and he described it to the man who was with him, who made up the, like, I totally saw them too. Muhammad said this happened, and it really did. I think that that was also a sleep paralysis event, because sexual violation is very common in sleep paralysis events. Now we have probing by aliens, but then they had like violation of this sort. And this is your prophet who is getting truth from sleep paralysis dreams. Really messed up stuff. Your religion comes from a sleep paralysis event that he saw as demonic until he was convinced otherwise by people who weren't there and saw nothing.
Yep. And look at this comment again. They will never debate on the morality of Jesus and Muhammad, because deep inside they're embarrassed. But just think about it. This guy is this amazing pattern of conduct. And when no one knew anything about Islam, if you go back 20 years, one of their top arguments was Muhammad's character is so perfect that he must be from God. And then, of course, that's back when people didn't know about Muhammad and Aisha and the Zud and all this, and people didn't know about that, and they just hear the Muslim talking about how perfect his character was. But just think about it. If they actually believed it and they had the slightest bit of confidence, wouldn't they be like ready to debate this at all times? It's like, it's like they'll debate all these other topics. They want, back in the day, they would debate Trinity versus Tawheed and things like that. They would debate Christian topics. Did Jesus die on the cross? Did he rise from the dead? Is he God? They'll debate the Trinity, things like that. Like, they don't want to go near Muhammad. Is Muhammad a true prophet? They don't want to go near, is the Quran the word of God? They don't want to go near, is Muhammad really the great pattern of conduct the Quran says? It's like, why? If you guys won these debates, you'd win. If you won the debate on whether Muhammad is a true prophet, you'd win. You just win. You don't need to debate anything else. He's a true prophet. You got to listen to him. Or if you could defend that the Quran is the word of God, they won't touch those things. Like the ones the claims that if you actually successfully defended them, you would win and it would show that your religion is true. They don't go near them. Why? They don't have. They've got confidence as. Let me put it this way. They have pretend confidence. They have fake confidence in these things. And they have this fake confidence when they're talking to someone who doesn't know anything about Islam, and they can lie all they want. When it's time to debate, they won't touch it, which means they don't really believe they can defend this stuff. And if you don't really believe you can defend the prophethood of Muhammad and the inspiration, the divine inspiration of the Quran and Muhammad's morality, it's like, what are you guys doing still in Islam? That would be like that would be like Christians, and like we just imagine Christians. We never want to defend Jesus' death, resurrection, and divine nature. We don't want to touch those topics. We don't want to go near them. We don't want to go near them. It's like, well, those are the foundational claims of the gospel. So, like, if we didn't want to go near those, it's like, do we even believe in the gospel? On the contrary, we love debating those topics, and we do all the time.
Exactly. So, Mary, where do you want to go now? Do you want to talk more about the childhood? Do you want to talk about the Muhammad's mom possibly actually being a prostitute? You mentioned that. Where do you want to go?
So we can talk about that briefly. The fact that Muhammad's father only spent 3 nights with her in her uncle's house and never seemed to have set up a house of her own shows that this was not what we would call a marriage arrangement. There's no other, and he was on his way, like he's being sexually propositioned by other women at this time, and like, oh, I'll see you later, kind of thing. So, this whole environment was not one of what we would call propriety, and also she ends up in Medina, and it's supposedly to be visiting uncles of his great-grandmother, his great-grandmother's brother's descendants is the excuse that they give. But his supposed great-grandmother was actually a traveler's wife, meaning that she was contracting with multiple men in Medina, and men were coming to her and spending time with her in their travels. And when they came back, she was the woman in every port. She was a woman in every port for multiple men. That's how she made her living. And it seems far more likely that that's what Amina was doing too. And her reputation in Mecca speaks to that. There's a lot of things about how the Arabs were viewed historically as being flyers of prostitutes, and many different sources, that they were very sexually promiscuous and that they normalized the trafficking of their women. The fact that Muhammad could just go out and contract muta marriage, all the people could do that easily. It's because women were standing by the roadsides offering themselves to people normatively. That was part of Islam. With Muhammad trying to be a Christian type, a Jewish type prophet, that's a big problem, because that's not the morality of scripture. And so he had to do lots of heavy revision for that. I think that one of the things that really shaped Islam and its promises really heavily, and its values, what kind of female does Islam hold as the most desirable of any female? What age? Well,
very young teen virgins, basically.
Well, not preteen virgins, in fact, because the word for ka'ib, not ka'ib, ka'ib, in the Quran, it is about a girl whose breasts are first forming. So that's like a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old. This is Tanner stage 2. This is below the cutoff for pedophilia. If you're making a distinction between hebephilia, which is a preference for developing teens, and pedophilia, which is a preference for children, this is on the pedophilia side. And that is what you are promised in Jannah. We have Muhammad saying to a man, oh, I heard that you married. Did you marry a virgin, or did you marry a matron, a woman who'd been married before? And you might think, oh, a virgin, like a 16-year-old, an 18-year-old, a 21-year-old, right? But no, the reply of the person speaking to Muhammad says, no, I did not marry a young. In some places it says a virgin, in other ones it talks about a young girl, and that word.
That's what I got the hadith up here. Yeah, it says, why didn't you marry a young girl so that you may play with her and she with you? What? Is this like talking about, like, is the Arabic talking about like that age range? So
here, well, young girl here is, it's generally talking about the word here is most commonly used for prepubescence, though not necessarily exclusively, but there are a bunch of times when his reply is given where he says, I did not marry a young girl, I did not marry a virgin, because I have a bunch of sisters who are of the same age, and I needed someone who could teach them manners, take care of them, and comb their hair. So this guy is assuming that Muhammad's talking about someone who doesn't yet have full manners, who doesn't yet physically take care of herself. And he's saying, hey, did you marry a girl who can't yet entirely take care of herself and comb her own hair? And he's like, no, I got someone who can take care of these other sisters that I have that got left behind when my dad died, because I can't have another kid like them. And Muhammad doesn't go, ew, yuck, why are you talking about marrying a little kid? And no, he's like, oh, well, you've done a good thing. In this case, I guess the fact that it's more pleasurable and better to marry this 9-year-old type of girl is outweighed by the fact that you practically need a woman who can cook, clean, teach manners, and comb hair with all these little girls to take care of.
Yeah, here's the hadith, Sahih Bukhari 4052. I needed somebody to take care of my 9 sisters, like teach them to comb their hair and stuff, like to look after them. Like, so the implication here is that like the marrying of a young girl would be something around like someone very young, it seems, like preteen, 12-ish, around that age. That's disgusting. But I mean, what do you expect? Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6. So that would have been normal for them to think it's okay to marry 6-year-olds, 9-year-olds. So like, what do you think is going on here?
I think that it's the fact that Muhammad had a physical condition that meant that he felt that that was actually ideal. I think that he suffered from a micropenis, which is can be caused by a number of things, most of which render people infertile. And the reason that I think this is that he feels that this is the ideal experience with a female is one who is very, very small physically.
Okay.
Hey, one second. Just wanted to point out that what Muhammad's companion was pointing out, like, hey, I could have gone for the super young girl, but I wanted someone who's older because I have sisters and we need someone to take care of them and so on. Muhammad actually did both because he married Sauda, who was older, because Muhammad supposedly had daughters and so on. So he marries Sauda to help take care of the daughters, but he also marries Aisha so he had the best of both worlds. Muhammad did both. Yes,
he did. And he didn't even have to sleep with Sauda. She just was his servant to take care of the girls until they were all married. And then she was afraid that he was going to divorce her because, and again, this speaks to what does Islam teach about the worth of a woman? If your wife gets old and you have the opportunity to get someone younger and hotter, and you don't feel like giving this old, fat, ugly woman support anymore, you have no obligation to her. Her worth is in her sexual attractiveness. So you can divorce her. And this is Muhammad's mindset because he was so warped by his messed up upbringing. And what he promises in Jannah, that you have little boys and little girls, is what is promised. These are children. You are promised sexual partners forever. Children, that is the ideal for Muhammad. Why would Muhammad think this? Unless his equipment was so undersized that not only did he not seriously injure Aisha, but for him, he's like, hey, this is the best. This must be the best for everybody. And he was very, very warped. And you might say, well, he had four other daughters. Well, there's very good evidence that none of those daughters were his, because there was a practice in pre-Islamic times that if you couldn't have any kids by your wife, you and another man would make an agreement where you would have intercourse with each other's wives, and you would still count the resultant children as your own. And there is some good evidence that he did this with Abu Talib, that he let Abu Talib sleep with Khadija, and he slept with his aunt. And the evidence for this is, number one, when Muhammad was choosing to adopt someone as his son, the normal thing to do would have been to marry his daughter to one of her cousins or close relatives and adopt that boy. He was already raising Ali in his family. It would have been expected for him to adopt Ali as his son. Instead, he chose this random slave. Why? Well, he couldn't have done that if they might have had the same biological father. There would have been a taboo against that. And he did not marry them together until his uncle was dead. And he could go, no, these are totally my kids. What are you talking about? And no one would question him. The second fact is that when his aunt died and he jumped down into the grave with her, what did all of his followers think that he was doing to this dead woman in the grave, who was his aunt? All of them.
Yeah, they thought there was intercourse going on there. Really creepy.
They all thought he was having sex with them. Why would they think automatically that if he gets in a grave with a dead aunt that it was sex? Well, they would have already had in their minds that this was a person with whom he would have sexual intercourse because of the wife swap thing.
Quick side note on the issue of Sauda, since we're talking about Muhammad being the pattern of conduct and his preference for younger girls and so on. Sauda got older and so on. And then he was going to divorce her so that he didn't have to spend time with her anymore. And it was basically she became old and unattractive to him and so on. So he was going to divorce her. And that's when she came up with the proposal, hey, don't divorce me, because no one's allowed to marry Muhammad's wives after him and so on. So she's just basically going to be off on her own. She comes to an agreement. Hey, you don't have to spend time with me. You don't have to do anything. Just don't divorce me, and make sure I still have food and a place to live. And the Quran praises her for this. The Quran praises her. Surah 4, verse 128 praises her wisdom in this situation. Hey, I'll renounce a bunch of my rights as a wife if you just don't divorce me. But think about this. This is the pattern of conduct in Islam. And his attitude is, you get married, and then later on in life, when she's no longer attractive to you, kick her to the curb and replace her with the younger model, the newer model, right?
Yeah, and it says
this is the pattern of conduct for men. Not, hey, you have married someone, and therefore you need to stick with her and be faithful all the way to death. Nope, it's hey, well, she's not attractive to you anymore. Get rid of her, replace her.
Yeah, and it says of the women who refuse to give up any, you're supposed to, as a woman, a virtuous woman will give up anything just to make her husband happy. So she will wear rags and eat scraps and have the most minimal standard of living, because what they call marriage in Islam is entirely transactional to begin with. You're selling your body for sex. You should reduce your rate until your husband is willing to put up with you. Otherwise, you are a selfish person. That is what 128 says. It condemns any woman who does not lower her price until her husband is fine with keeping her on. It's shocking stuff. And this is the pattern. This is what Islam makes. And what Islam promises in the end is Muhammad's ideal sexual fulfillment, which is endless numbers of children to have intercourse with. As someone else said in the chat, that why is Muhammad squatting when he pees all the time? The fact that he has a micropenis would point to that. He either has to have hypospadias or micropenis or something that makes it very difficult for him to pee standing up. And I believe that the Jewish woman who tricked him into believing that the torment of the grave was because of urine did that because she knew that something was weird about how he peed. And so she was just messing with him. And he adopted that. And again, in Islam, because he was tricked by a Jewish woman into believing that most of the torment of the grave, the thing that you are punished for the most, you're supposed to be punished for your temporal sins in the grave. The worst of the temporal sins is getting pee on you. According to Muhammad, again, your perfect prophet, this is apparently what Allah cares about. And this feeds into his insecurity and his weirdness about his sexual insufficiencies and his terror and fears.
Yeah, here it is. Like, what I like about Sunnah.com, you can search this stuff and you'll find it. It's just, there's so many weird hadith that are sahih. And it's like, he was upset, really upset. All that punishment happening in hell. Yeah. In the grave. Yep. That's because of urine. You didn't urinate properly. This is the pattern of conduct for Muslims. This is stuff they got to worry about, urinating properly, guys. Like, this is messed up. So
yeah, what's even funnier is Aisha, that the Jewish woman first came to Aisha, and Aisha's like, that can't be true. You can't be punished because of urine in the grave. Muhammad's like, no, she's telling the truth. Most of the punishment in the grave is because of urine. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's weird. We'll get into the impotency stuff. Let's do some super chats, then you can bring in some stuff on that. So what do you think about the Amazing Digital Circus? Do you think that's a show that Christians can watch? I've not seen it. I would recommend using discernment. You'll know. I've never heard anything bad about it, though. Hope everyone is having a wonderful week. Well, I hope you are too, sir. Opinion, why people are not using Deuteronomy forbiddness, praying to stones as proof Islam is false. Am I missing something? Because it seems like a golden point.
I do all the time.
Yeah. I forget where that verse is in there.
Oh, well, again,
27:8. Yeah, I think that's it.
So
no, wait.
People are to come into the Levant when they're supposed to come into the Promised Land. They are ordered to smashed the standing stones. And the standing stones, the word for that is the word that would describe the black stone. The black stone is one of these aniconic idols. Muslims, for some reason, are just convinced themselves that idols all have to be carved. No, the normative idol of that area, of the pagans, were aniconic stones. You can find one still. Aphrodite, which is on Crete, is one of them and is now in a museum. They are stones of different colors. They were aniconic. They were not carved. And the Jews are ordered to come in and smash them all. This is just one that some other pagans set up at a later time that the Jews didn't smash because it was probably set up hundreds and hundreds of years later after the point and far, far away from where the Jews were.
Yeah. Yep. That's Deuteronomy 12. I just looked it up. You got a problem with autistic people? I'm autistic. I didn't know. I don't. I'm just saying I'm not autistic. I know. I'm not. Scientifically proven.
Hey, yeah. Oh, but yeah, a little side note. Young Bob in the UK is autistic, and he is crushing it. He's crushing it. It's always a good idea, guys. If you have something that is regarded as some sort of impairment or disability or personality disorder, in my case, see where it actually can give you an advantage in certain situations, and maybe that's what you're made for. Like they try everything with young Bob. He'll go up and show up and they will try everything, hurling stuff at him, hitting him, every sort of insult, threat, and so on. He's just laser focused. They can't distract him and stuff because he becomes fixated on it and stuff like that, and it enrages them.
Yeah. Yep. Important question. Did Mary had a little lamb?
Mary was quite contrary. That was what Mary was.
Did you ever own a lamb?
I have never owned a lamb, but my mother used to recite Mary, quite contrary to me over and over again as a child. So
Aaron says, my church will have a class on false religions. I'll be leading the one on Islam. I have the Orda passage, the satanic influence, the Islamic dilemma, contrast Muhammad and Jesus. Advice on this. David Wood said that Muhammad fulfills everything the Bible warns about a false prophet, but I need the passages. Okay, well, Galatians 1, Matthew 7, and I believe it's also Deuteronomy 13 is where all those are. Deuteronomy 13 and the Deuteronomy 18:20.
Yeah, definitely want Deuteronomy 18:20. Those would be the main ones, right? I mean, especially what Mike already pointed out, Jesus in Matthew 7, where, false prophet, beware of false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves, and that you shall know them by their fruits. We're talking about Muhammad's fruits right now, right? This is and you can look at the impact he has had on humanity as far as his fruit. So you can, anything on the morality issue, you can pack into on that as far as Muhammad's fruits. And then they come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they're ravening wolves. He's like the ultimate fulfillment of that, because he comes, hey, Jews and Christians, yeah, I'm on your side. By the end, we all have to be violently subjugated. So you have that. And then as far as Deuteronomy 18:20, you already mentioned the satanic verses, so that's like the perfect example of that, because Deuteronomy 18:20 gives two criteria of a false prophet. The satanic verses meets both of those criteria, and he would have been executed during the time of Moses. Muslims claim to respect Moses, but their prophet would have been executed by Moses. So you have some things like that. You also have, if you want more passages on it, beginning of 2 Peter 2, first couple verses of 2 Peter 2 talks about false prophets and then false teachers that are going to be among you, and Muhammad's a really good description there. And then there's Jeremiah 23:14, where there he's talking about how the false prophets convince people that the horrible things they're doing are okay, right? That's what Muhammad does, right? Hey, you want to molest a little? Hey, you're fine. You're a good guy. You want to beat your wife, and hey, you're good with God over this stuff. So that's another example there. And there's some more. You could just look up. You probably do a search for what the Bible says about false prophets, and everything sounds like Muhammad.
Yeah. So is this all found in the Mohammed-Steen files? They are. Yeah, that's what we're going through right now. It's the Mohammed-Steen files. I hope you're enjoying it.
Someone should make a video of the Mosteen files.
Is 5 years too late for an abortion in Islam? It's a good question.
And that is actually kind of important because people like to say, oh, Islam at least has family values. No, it's pro-abortion. Until a child is ensouled, according to Islamic theology, which is 120 days, you're not doing anything that isn't birth control according to Islam. So you're just preventing a birth in the same way that blocking the semen would. And even after that, there is no hudud penalty for killing your child. Even though you're not supposed to kill your child, there's actually no serious penalty in Islam for killing your child at any age. If you have a good reason to kill your child because, she's bringing shame to the family, that will be winked at. If you are afraid that you yourself will get into terrible trouble if you have a child, that is a reason to abort the child in Islamic law. These are rulings that are made. So it is truly a dark, deep death cult from beginning to end. Everything has the appearance of one thing, and then inside you just cut it open and it's rotten and stinking and evil in every sense. It's so despicable inside.
That's what I've been saying for years. It's all superficial. This stuff. Islam's so simple and it's just a pure worship of God and all this stuff. And it sounds good on a superficial level. Dig 1 inch beneath the surface, and all you ever find is evil, demonic, blasphemous nonsense.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up. Autism recognizes autism. Well, I've never had anybody who's autistic think that I am. In the ER, if this is my last stream, just make sure you do a stream with Dr. Falk on Moses and Egypt in the Quran. And I know I like David more. God bless. Well, I hope nothing bad happens. We'll keep you in prayers.
Yeah, especially since you're one of the few people over here who has common sense.
Yeah, what is going on? I hope everything's okay with you, man. It's just a weird, by the way, I'm in the ER. If I die, do this thing. I'm like, I need more context.
Come on, AT.
Dropped? No, that's the Zabibi. That's when Muhammad was. That's when Muhammad did. It wasn't dropped on his head. That's his Zabibi. I get it.
So he got a Zabiba immediately from birth whenever he got dropped on his head. But yeah, the Ibn Sa'd versions are so much more hilarious. Ibn Ishaq tried to make them less goofy. Ibn Ishaq, there's just light when the baby's born. Ibn Sa'd is shot straight out of her vagina. Zoom! Like a beam. Read Ibn Sa'd. It's great. It's great. It's insane.
I don't know what I walked into, but it sounds crazy and sad. Yeah. So let's get on the impotence stuff if you want to talk about that, Mary. What is going on here? What is and I'm going to press you on your evidence because I want to make sure we got some there, because Muslims will push back and they'll go, well, no, he had kids. He couldn't have been. So what's your evidence?
Well, let's start first of all with the argument that he had kids. Even the Shia deny that 3 of the 4 daughters are his. They straight up deny it. They say only Fatima is his, period. That would not line up with the date of marriage unless they were having this wife swap event. We also find out that his oldest child was probably only born 2 years, maybe a little bit more after they actually married. And you also find an enormous amount of preoccupation, Quran, with human reproduction. What is the message that Muhammad said that the angel came to him with? It was about the Galenic versus the Aristotelian theories about reproduction. He is settling an ancient debate about reproduction. He's wrong. Allah has no idea how people are made. But what his message is actually, oh, Muhammad, do not fear. You do not have daughters because you are insufficient as a man and do not have enough seed to create a girl. In fact, those children are daughters because it is the will of Allah, and he's the one who determines, he's the one who makes a male or a female. That's what 96, that's the message of 96, is that it is with Allah to decide whether or not there is, male or female or whatever. He is the one who decides. So don't think of yourself as being the cutoff one, as everyone's mocking you as, because you have no daughters and they may not even be yours. It's just all of this is up to Allah. Allah has made these decisions. Be comforted by this. Most people don't need as a message of comfort. Like the number one thing in their head is not about how are babies made, right? But this is the number one concern of Muhammad, the number one thing that would make him happy to hear and would convince him that he's a true prophet is if he's getting these messages about sexual reproduction that would have him not be sexually inferior. I think that he was, at this point, actually having intercourse with people, clearly had been having intercourse, but again, the developmental issue of a micropenis is often found with other lacks that cause infertility. There's also the fact that he has a servant who is called Barakah. She's also called Ayman. She had a son named Ayman, and if you go to William Blank has his name, Holds in the narrative guy, Yasser Qadi. If you go to him, he will say that this child was born way back in the Jahiliyyah, but in a lot of because he's like leading raids and things, but his birth date is messed with, most likely because he was born to Barakah before she was married to, or before Muhammad was married to Khadijah. And I believe that Muhammad tried to claim this son as his own, because you could claim your slaves' children, because he was sleeping, unfortunately, with his mother figure, Barakah. He was sleeping with his mother figure, and he was denied. The divination fell out wrong. No, this is not your son. So he doesn't get your name. And the adoption, and this is really convoluted, but the adoption of Zayd, who was a slave given to him by his wife when they married, the adoption of the slave brought this young boy that he thought was, or wanted to think was, his actual son, even though the divination went out negative, back into inheritance by freeing them and making them his heirs too. So these two sons, one of whom was Zayd's and Barakah's, the other one is Barakah's and some unknown man she slept with, but Muhammad tried to think it was his. So this again shows this anxiety about having sons, about paternity, about even having children at all. Then when he gets married,
go
ahead.
Well, wouldn't that just been a normal thing? Like a lot of ancient people had anxiety about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it would have been a normal thing for people who were impotent, because it happened. You are not impotent, who were infertile. Infertility happens. Something like 10% of men from a young age are infertile. It's just something that happens. But in that society, it was considered a very deep tragedy and made you less of a man. And given that, what was his childhood like? He was sexually abused, treated as less than a man. And now he's finally married. He's married to this woman who has got status, and he doesn't produce any children for a while. And then they start doing the wife swap thing, where he could plausibly convince himself that these are actually his biological children. And now the only ones who live are girls. Even then, like, everything seems cursed against any kind of position of worth or masculinity or status within his culture.
So what's is that like part of the evidence he's impotent? Like tie that all together, like, or I guess you meant infertile or something like that.
So him being called cut off one often, him being mocked for not having children, the evidence that people thought he was having intercourse with his aunt already. They thought that this was an established thing, that this aunt was someone he would have sex with. The fact that he did not marry his cousin that he fostered, Ali, he would not marry him to his own daughter until Abu Talib was dead, because they were probably half siblings. And so you shouldn't marry half siblings to each other, even within this fairly incestuous relationship, that only after that could he go, yes, this marriage can take place. All of these things, and when he had enough authority to do so that people wouldn't dare to question him when he said, yes, this is indeed my daughter. The fact that the Shia, of course, they come from Ali, but they accept Fatima as a true daughter of Muhammad biologically. There's also the really weird passage where Muhammad says that he's not the father of any of you people. It's not even men. It's, I'm not the father of anybody, in the Quran, where he seems to like briefly speak the truth, because he's not just saying I'm not the father of males. He's saying I'm not the father of anybody. I'm not anybody's father, just in that moment. And so when he marries again, Sauda is maybe 35. She should have had a few years more to have a couple more kids. She doesn't have any kids. Yeah, he marries Aisha, and she doesn't go through puberty till she's like 14. But he marries tons of other women. Hafsa's like 19. Tons of them are in their teens. They're the most beautiful women. They're fairly young, previously married women. He murders their husbands and then marries the hottest of the widows, who are like very typically between the ages of like 16 and young 20s. None of them have kids. One girl pops up with a child, and it's Mary the Copt. And what is the assumption then? What immediately happens after that? They're chasing the Coptic man who came with her with a sword. And he supposedly lifts up his skirts and shows him that he's already been made a eunuch.
So Muhammad's slave gets pregnant. It was a sex slave. Let's be honest. That's how evil Muhammad was. And the people don't respond, well, this is obviously Muhammad's kid. They respond, this has got to be someone else's kid, because it's like they knew stuff. That's a weird, undesigned coincidence. That's like an odd thing to talk about.
Aisha said to him, he doesn't look like you. Like, this is a hadith where Aisha's like, yeah, that kid doesn't look like you. And she got mad at him.
Wow. Like,
So they're chasing the other Coptic man around. He's like, no, I'm her brother. Oh, and I'm totally. Why would they have not known that he was a eunuch for years before this point, right? Mm-hmm. Suddenly, only now when she's pregnant, do they discover that he's been a eunuch all along. Seems very, very, very suspicious. And, Aisha's going, that doesn't look like you. When the child is born, they snatch the child from Mary the Copt and immediately whisk him away and give him to a family of blacksmiths. Now, this is really interesting because even at this time, they had the idea that bad air was a cause of death. And they would talk about visiting this child in the blacksmith's house while smoke billowed around. Why are you giving a child, in your own medical knowledge, bad air kills kids? Why are you giving this kid that he's saying is his to a blacksmith whose house is full of smoke to raise? That's really weird stuff. You don't let the mother nurse it. You just take him away, put it, really weird stuff. And he cried when he died because he kind of half convinced himself, this is my kid, but half really knew it wasn't. So this is very meaningful details.
Where did his daughters come from? Who would have been their fathers, I guess?
Right. So this would be Abu Talib, who was his uncle, the uncle who abused him. Yes, this is so messed up because he was the one that he had the closest relationship with. Aisha describes a form of marriage that they had in pagan times where men would have intercourse with each other's wives. And she says it's so that a man can be the father of a noble child, which makes no sense because any child born into the family would be counted as that man's child. What it would have really been for was, if you don't have any kids, it would be like a living Levirate marriage, right? So in the traditional Levirate marriage, if a man died without any children, then his wife could demand that his brother marry her and give her a child that would take the inheritance of the brother and would support her in her old age and all of that. And so he's having a child through her on behalf of his brother. And so this would be a kind of living levirate marriage where he's still alive and they just have intercourse with each other's wives. And that way you can use doubt to go, hey, this child, this child is born to my wife that I'm still married to. This child can be counted as mine, and I can believe that this child is mine. There are things in the sources referring to wife swapping, exchanging wives, that are that this may have been something that continued on into the Islamic time for a good deal of time in Medina, that they would have wife swaps and still it would count as the child of the person whose wife it actually was.
This is some crazy stuff, man.
It is
crazy stuff. Yeah. I mean, I guess you can say this is to explain why Muhammad was so messed up and he was delivering the kind of revelations where he's being, he's treating women like second-class citizens. They can be beat. Marital rape is a thing allowed in the Quran. I mean, and it's just all this evil, horrible stuff is coming from what Muslims tell us is the most perfect man ever. And it most obviously wasn't. This guy had some serious mental issues because of all the things done to him and all of the issues he had. I don't know how anybody could follow this man. I don't know. I don't get it. This is coming from their own sources. All this data you're presenting is coming from their own sources.
Yes. Including Aisha just looking at the kid and going, he doesn't look anything like you. Imagine that. I mean, just wild stuff.
Yeah. So Muhammad let his uncle. So Muhammad let his uncle sleep with his wives then to produce children.
Well, his one wife when he only had Khadijah, and that's why he had the 4 daughters, because there was a delay. Khadijah had at least 4 children to her 2 previous husbands before she married Muhammad. She marries Muhammad. She doesn't get pregnant for 2 years after their marriage. Who's infertile? It's not Khadijah. No. So you can, if you have this wife swap arrangement with one person, he's essentially fathering children from your line on your behalf that count as yours. And this is part of what made his abolishment of adoption so bizarre, because the entire reason he did is just because he wanted to bang his daughter-in-law.
Yeah, guys, just so you know, in Islam, adoption has been abolished by Muhammad because he was that messed up.
Yeah, he abolished it so that he could have sex with his daughter-in-law, whom he had recently declared was his true daughter. If your daughter-in-laws are like your daughters, so you can't have sex with them. Well, he has a daughter-in-law that really turns him on. She apparently is a butterface. He sees her face like, I don't want to marry you. Go marry Zayd. Ew, you're ugly. Then he sees her hot rocking body.
Who was also his first cousin, I might add.
Who was his first cousin? Oh, yeah, the woman. Yes. Yeah. Zainab. Yeah, Zainab was his first cousin.
His first cousin married to his adopted son, who he declares to be his daughter, and then he gets the hots for her and then abolishes adoption so he can marry Zainab, his declared daughter, first cousin. This is like down. And the
thing is, this pattern of marrying first cousins is established by Muhammad as being something that's preferable in the same way that marrying little kids is. And so you have really high rates of incest in Islamic countries. When you repeatedly marry first cousins like this, you become more related than brother and sister. It is closer in relation than brother and sister marriages are happening daily, repeatedly, in places like Pakistan, because this is the Prophet's pattern. This is his pattern for the perfect society. This is his value system.
We gotta do a skit, like a Jerry Springer episode.
You could do multiple skits. All we need is like the stage, which could be like a church or something like this. We just have to set up the stage like it's one of these shows, and we could have multiple shows prepared and do several of them at once, because you definitely need the what's that guy's name, Maury something, where
you are not the father.
You are not the father and stuff like that. And could do multiple
Yeah.
things. Oh, and I have to say, Vocab would be happy to be up on that stage as Prophet
Nice.
Muhammad in the show.
And yeah, and then with what's even crazier is that the Quran gives two different reasons why he's being allowed to bang his legal daughter, whom he's declared as his daughter he shouldn't have sex with. The first one is so that you know it's okay to have sex with the spouses of adopted children. That's
one of the age-old conundrums philosophers have debated for years prior to this revelation. Yeah, okay,
And Allah doesn't bother to tell you how long it takes babies to like mature in the womb, but he needs to tell you this, that you can bang the children of adopted, or the spouses of adopted children. But then a different reason is given, which is that adoption is abolished, that adoption doesn't exist, that it's not real, that men should be called by the names of their own true biological fathers. These two things cannot be the reasons because they contradict. If you do have adoption and it's okay to have sex with the relatives of your adopted child, then that's one reason. If they're not really adopted, that's a different reason. These cannot both be true. Either one's true or the other's true. But what happened was Muhammad revealed the first one. Everyone was still ticked at him. So then he revealed the second one. Like, they're like, what do you mean it's okay if they're adopted? The whole point of adoption is that they're in your family. It's like, well, what Allah really meant was, but both of them are kept. This is so obviously not just human, but just vilely driven by lust. As Aisha herself observed, that I observe that your Lord hurries to do your pleasure, that Allah obeys you. And every time she got ticked at him, she called Allah your Lord. Did not call him Allah, called him your Lord. Because she knew at some level that Allah was his sock puppet.
Just wanted to point out, just because me and AP last night, he was asking about the book Answering Islam. People are asking about books and so on. Then AP asked me about Answering Islam, which he hadn't read yet. And I pointed out that was the first book I read on Islam. That was the only book I read on Islam when I was still locked up, because I was having discussions with Muslims and stuff. And so I was saying it's definitely one of the best books, and probably apart from maybe Nabil's book, because it's telling it in the context of, like a biography that might be more engaging for people. But as far as just like apologetics books dealing with Islam, Answering Islam, probably the best book out there still. But that's by Norm Geisler and Abdul Salib. Abdul Salib, I heard a talk by him, and he said basically he moved from the Middle East to a European country, and he said that when he's growing up, he thought everyone believed in Muhammad. He thought Christians believed in Muhammad. They just put more emphasis on Jesus. And so he's like, oh, we're Muslims. We believe in Jesus, but we focus on Muhammad. And Christians, they believe in everyone, but they also, they focus more on Jesus and so on. So anyway, he gets there and he finds out, he finds out on a college campus. He's like, and he says, he starts running to his Muslim friends. Did you know they don't believe in Muhammad? And so he's freaked out. But anyway, so then he starts going to going to studies because he's trying to learn English. And it was that issue of Muhammad and Zayd and Zainab that was the first thing that caused him to ever doubt Islam. He said he was just thinking about that verse, Surah 33, verse 37, where Allah says, hey, you really need to take the wife of your own adopted son, because I need other people to understand that. And he said he just started thinking, is this a serious issue that men struggle with so much that Allah has to have Muhammad go out and do it? Or is it way more likely that Muhammad wanted to do it and therefore comes up with this? And anyway, it was that's what started his doubts about Islam. And then ultimately ended up putting out maybe the best apologetics book dealing with Islam.
And someone corrected me. You are correct that not only can you marry the children of your adopted, because adoption doesn't count anymore, their spouses and other relatives, you can actually marry your own biological offspring in at least one branch of Sunni Islam. And when there are differences, it is a principle. that when there's consensus, you have to go with the consensus. When there are differences, they are a mercy for you, and so you can pick and choose. So even if you're from a different branch, you can choose to interpret it according to this branch. If it pleases you, this is your mercy. Allah makes it easy for you. Legitimately, through zina, with a woman, you can marry that child in one of the Islamic, in one of the schools of fiqh. So in one of the schools of fiqh, in one of the madhabs, you can marry your biological child as long as it was a child of zina, because that only counts as your child if you have a mahr arrangement. If you have bought the woman, if you have bought that womb and that vagina, it is yours. And when you breed from it, it's yours. But if you have not paid this money to buy it officially, then it's not yours. So you can marry your own daughter and it is fine.
Yeah. In Judaism, Maimonides was considered great because he indexed the Talmud. Can Mary index the Hadith so we can use it, and we will call it her Maimonides?
Maimonides.
Yes. I like that idea. This and that Galogic stream are better than Ozempic. I don't think you should be taking Ozempic anyway. That's kind of a low bar.
He's saying it's better. You don't have the whatever side effects there are.
That you skip meals.
Oh, I see. It's causing him to throw up. I get it.
Right. It's causing you to skip meals, lose weight.
Muhammad and Candace Owens have weird dreams. That's true. Muhammad, that's the thing. The psychology is not that far off. I'm just saying there's some similarities there. Just creepy, weird stuff going on. Apostate of Allah says, I object. The Al-Zut was not a dream.
Good point. We might have to have a debate in the future on whether Muhammad was actually banged by the 30-minute Al-Zut or if he was simply dreaming and fantasizing about it.
Yeah.
Ben Withman.
Is
what he's trying to say. It'd be Withman, but yeah.
This guy says he's my psychotherapist for 42 years. Muhammad had
bipolar disorder.
Bipolar disorder. Yeah, that would make sense.
Had OCD too.
He had a ton of problems, and people need to understand you can actually have. They did a study of people. Now this was in a psychiatric hospital, but people who had been diagnosed with a personality disorder. So you got personality disorders like narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and so on, bipolar. But they did a study, and over half of the people who met the requirements for one personality disorder met the requirements for another personality disorder, and some people met the requirements for all 10 personality disorders. So it's not like you have one thing and that's what you are. You can have a whole bundle of issues, and Muhammad seems like he did. And as Mike has pointed out, you can have a little sympathy because these things can be connected to childhood trauma, and he had his share of that.
Sure did. Yep. TMM was Aisha the only girl Mo deflowered. Yeah.
Yes, she was the only virgin. Actually, Aisha interfered in other marriages that he would have had with the girl. As soon as she started getting older and he started contracting marriages with girls who were younger than her, who were like 15, 16, she interfered with it. She's like, she supposedly tricked one into saying something to cause Muhammad to divorce her. She told another one who didn't want the marriage what to say to make him get rid of her. Like, apparently she knew that if he had
why would the girl not want to marry the most amazing perfect man ever? I don't get it. Why would she not want to do that? I don't understand. I'm confused.
There's another time where marriage was contracted with a girl who thought that this was a good idea, and her family threw a fit and it got canceled. They're like, nope, she doesn't know what she's talking about. We're taking her home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good point. Someone pointed out BPD would be borderline personality disorder,
Yes,
not
not
bipolar. Yeah.
bipolar.
So
Yeah,
borderline actually seems significantly more likely to me than bipolar. So
Yeah,
probably
a little bit of both. Hey, sorry I'm late. Did the ex-lawyer show?
Oh, hang on. That's well, I mean, one of the characteristics, borderline personality disorder, like you do messed up things that make people not trust you and drive them away, but you obsessively want to control them and keep them from leaving you. It's like Muhammad does all this weird stuff and like then, but he'll execute you for leaving him.
Yeah. I'm sorry I'm late. Did the ex-lawyer show up? No, I don't think he ever showed up. He definitely did not show up at all for any of that stuff. Momo's equipment was small. Allah couldn't find it. Hello, my fellow kuffar. Hello, fellow kuffar. Yep. 50 Shades of Hadith. Ugh, gross.
Oh, there's another story that points to the fact that Muhammad's equipment was probably messed up. Because again, Muhammad keeps wanting to make all the prophets like him. So he tells the story that this rumor is going around that one of the prophets has something wrong with his stuff. And so Moses was shy and wouldn't be naked in front of people. So they had this rumor that something was wrong with his junk. And so the rock stole his clothing. So he had to run after the rock, and everyone saw that indeed he had normal equipment. Yes. And he also said that, basically if a prophet did have such small equipment, then he would not ever have intercourse, because he said that John the Baptist, the reason why he was a pure person who didn't ever commit zina, like literally the only reason he didn't commit zina, everyone comes with fornication as a sin except for John the Baptist, and John the Baptist doesn't have fornication because he only had something as a male member that's the size of a small twig, therefore he could not have fornicated. So in Muhammad's teaching, the only men who don't fornicate are those who are unequipped to do so. Pretty significant thing.
Muhammad in a mosque said only him and a companion can have relations in there. Did he? I don't know that hadith.
Well, he did do this retreat thing in a mosque. It was a pagan thing where you would like spend time in a shrine, and Muslims still do it because, of course, it just Muslimized all the pagan stuff. And his wife set up tents in there with him, which kind of hints that he might have been doing more than just hanging out there.
Kind of weird, yeah. So how am I supposed to take this religion seriously? You're not. That's the point, Ezra. That's the point. You're not supposed to. Let's see. Deuteronomy 21:10-14 teaches grape. No, it doesn't. Let's go through this. I'm going to, this is, I believe I know what this is regarding. Yes, it's exactly what I thought it was. Okay. So I talked to a scholar named Joel Correcco about this. He had a very important take on this. So now's a good time to cover this so that you guys can learn this as well when you bring it up. So this is, I talked to Joel Correcco at ETS. This was his idea. So let's just read this. He wants you to notice how the pronouns shift in this. So when you go out to war against your enemies and the Lord your God gives them into your hand and you take them captive. Notice it's all about you. And you see among the captives a beautiful woman and you desire to take her to be your wife and you bring her to your house. Notice what happens right after this, Mary. David as well. Notice what happens. The pronouns shift to she. She shall shave her head and pare her nails, and she shall take off her clothes in which she was captured, and shall remain in your house and lament her father and her mother a full month. After that, you may go into her and be your husband. So notice it seems as though because the pronouns shift that she's a willing participant. She has to do these. It's not you shave her head and pare her nails. You take off her clothes. You don't do that. She has to be the one who does this stuff. So right then and there seems to be some autonomy here given to the woman. And again, it's you go to be her husband. So, and again, if she is a willing participant, okay, then it's consensual marriage. So yeah, it's not a perfect ideal situation, obviously, given that this is a situation of war. But I mean, like the idea that this is just like all of that, no, not necessarily taught by the text. Just wanted to point that out pretty briefly there.
There's also another important point there about divorce, that you're never allowed to divorce her. The difference between a wife and a concubine legally in the system was that concubines were only owed their freedom upon divorce, And so you could legally kick them out. This is not God's plan. This is not his what he teaches is monogamy.
Yeah, right here. He's like, you can't get rid of her. He's like, you just can't treat her like a slave.
You cannot get rid of her at all. You cannot get rid of her. You cannot toss her out. She has to have the position of wife for the rest of her life if you have decided to do this. So with concubines, usually it was a contraction. It was a contract for the purposes of a marriage without a dowry, without an inheritance from the father. She had no inheritance. And so if there was a divorce, then she would not be owed anything. But here it's like, no, because you have taken her in war, you cannot get rid of her if you decide you're sick of her. You must marry her and support her for the rest of her life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm also going to be doing a video with Joel Correcco on Deuteronomy 22, 28 to 29, because people like Dan McClellan argue that's about grape as well. We'll be responding to that and putting out a video where he put together a lot of good research. God bless you. Could I share my testimony here one day? I was on the We Need to Talk on 3/30/26. It went viral by God's grace to reach more souls. Yeah, I'll check it out and let you know what I think. I need to check it out first. David is my favorite too, except for Mike Winger.
David's the founder of the Mike Winger fan club.
That's true. This is true.
Mary, that was libelous nonsense for which Mike Winger will be sued, along with anyone who supports that nonsense.
Yeah. Mary, when are you doing a head wrap tutorial? Oh, hi, IP and David Wood.
So I love the turban because Muhammad said that all women who wear turbans go to hellfire. He just had this thing against women in turbans. I thought that was so hilarious. I'm like, that's it. That's my style.
Hey, that's weird because Muhammad had a problem with women wearing turbans. Let's just say he didn't have much of a problem with men wearing women's clothing. More on that tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. More on that tomorrow.
Interesting stuff. God is one. Jesus isn't God. Obviously, you don't know what you're talking about. That's heresy. Jesus is God. Just read. Look up our research on Luke 6:46, Matthew 7:21 to 23. Jesus explicitly claims to be God when he calls himself Lord, Lord. Glad Mary was able to get away from the Mushroom Kingdom and spend time with you. This is true. Thank you for broadcasting from the Mushroom Kingdom.
Very welcome.
In defense of 33:5-4, why would you need to adopt someone who is pretty much closer than a son anyway? I don't know what this is about, but yeah.
No, go back. Yeah, so that's Surah 33 verses 4-5. That's the passage about outlawing adoption. So in defense of Surah 33, 4-5, why would you need to adopt someone who is pretty much closer than a son anyway? Yeah, I don't understand that. So that's just the passage where just saying you don't call them, you call them by their biological father's names, not by your family's name. So that's what adoption is. So you're not actually adopting them. You can take care of an orphan or something like that in Islam. You don't adopt them. They don't become a real part of your family.
Yeah. There's nothing here about them being close to you. Yeah. What it's saying is that men do not have two hearts, so their hearts actually belong to their biological family. You don't count. You can't be taken. You cannot be united by love, affection, and anything else. Only biology matters is what's being said here. So you can't call your wife your mother to adopt her in that way and then get out of the marriage, and you cannot adopt a son because their allegiance belongs to their actual family.
Mm-hmm. Is it more likely Mo is mentally ill or demonic? Or demoniac? The answer to that is yes.
Doesn't have to be. Yeah, doesn't have to be either.
No, the answer is just simply yes. Why not both? P, when you said, "Hey Google," my phone responded. I'll do it again. Watch. Hey Google. Hey Google. Hey Siri.
Alexa.
With Muhammad, the more I learn about this guy, the more I don't care for him. I get it too. I don't see why. He was the most perfect man ever. He's the pattern of conduct for Muslims. I don't get it.
That's the Norm guy. That's no, I said Norm guy. Sorry, because I was talking about Norm guy. That's the Norm Macdonald saying. He said it about little mustache guy. The more I learn about that guy, the more I don't care for him. Kind of seems like a real jerk.
With the Deuteronomy 14 passage, we have to remember that the past was the worst. What it described sounded like a mourning ritual of the culture. Yeah, it was. Yeah, that you're talking about Deuteronomy, I believe 21. I mean, that's like what you meant. And yeah, it seems to be a mourning ritual for sure. Yeah.
Oh, and I want to point out someone saying, you can adopt them. You just can't change their name. No, you cannot adopt them. They're not part of your family. That's why the breastfeeding of adults came in. To cause them to become fosters so that you don't necessarily have to cover up all the time when this person who is outside your family is in the household. So that means if there's a little girl who is in your house, she needs to cover up because the men are of a relation that they should want to have intercourse with her if she's not covered. If you have a boy that you are fostering and not breastfeeding, then the women of the household have to cover up from him because he will want to have intercourse with them. That is the context, and it's very, very dark. And that's why the absolute insanity of breastfeeding adults came in, is to try to get around that.
Yeah. So with all the wife swapping, he wants to read Surah 33, what is it? Through Surah 353 here.
Yep. My favorite verse of the Quran.
Oh, believers, do not enter the homes of the prophet without permission. And if invited for a meal, do not come early and linger until the meal is ready. But if you're invited, then enter on time. Once you've eaten, then go on your way and do not stay for casual talk. Such behavior is truly annoying to the prophet, yet he is too shy to ask you to leave. So luckily, Allah is talking through Muhammad and saying this. This just sounds like what the nonsense of a little kid. My imaginary friend wants you to know that he really likes muffins. Can you give me a muffin so that and then the kid takes the muffin and eats it. That's what this sounds like just very obviously. Like, my imaginary friend says, I'm too shy to tell you this. So my imaginary friend is going to tell you that I'm annoyed by you. Please leave. Like,
Allah could not be bothered to tell people how to properly pray within the Quran because he needed to have the room for this, because this was so important that all future generations know and continuously recite so that they receive the benefits of Allah for recitation by articulating this.
Yeah. But Allah is never shy of the truth. And when you ask his wives for something, ask them from behind a barrier. This is pure of your hearts and theirs. And it is not right for you to annoy the messenger of Allah, nor ever marry his wives after him. This would certainly be a major offense in the sight of Allah. Yeah, that kind of does make sense why Muhammad would get this revelation to, because he knew about all that stuff going on. That does kind of make sense. Genetically close. Yes. The breast, what adults now? Did those words happen? Yeah. There's original parts of the Quran that were eaten by a sheep, I believe. Aisha just happened to let it get eaten by a sheep, where there was apparently revelations from Allah that you could make someone your son if you breastfeed them so many times. So that it was all over this whole issue of if a woman hires a man to work for her, how do we know they're not having an affair? So Muhammad's genius plan, Allah's genius plan was, well, she should breastfeed this employee of hers, and that way he will become a son to her. Therefore, it's like they're obviously not having sex. Like, what?
So 2 points. First of all, this is the only holy text ever edited by a sheep. That is the Quran's claim to fame. No other text has been edited in such a way. Secondly, this comes from Muhammad's belief and the belief of Allah and of the people of the time that the woman's fluid is blood that gets transformed into basically breast milk that then goes down into your womb and forms the child. So the seminal fluid of the woman that also builds the child is identical to breast milk. So that is why fosterage creates biological relationships in terms of breastfeeding one another's children. That child becomes part of you because what is considered to be identical with your female seminal fluid has gone into this child and helped build up this child as a growing being. And so Muhammad's like, well, let's take this same theory and make this biological, and this will make a biological relationship between you and an adult, which leads to some really weird thoughts about food, like you're biologically related to all your food or something. I don't know. But then later on, supposedly, he abrogated that and said that, oh no, it's only when they're growing does this work as a seminal fluid that builds biological relationships. But do keep in mind that this fosterage through breastfeeding causing real biological relationships. Because remember, no adoption. It cannot be ceremonial. It has to be biological, but it's only biology matters. All adoption is out the window. It's a biological relationship. Oh, this only happens through kids now. Again, Allah is very concerned with how babies are made and completely wrong about it. This is your God, Muslims.
Here you go, Ash. Here it is. Yeah, the verses of the stoning and the breastfeeding. An adult 10 times was revealed, and the paper was with me under my pillow. This is Aisha talking, and the messenger of Allah died, and we were preoccupied with his death, and a sheep came in and just ate it. I mean, like, come on, Aisha. We know what you really did. You didn't want that. You didn't want to be breastfeeding a bunch of grown men, so you let the sheep come in and eat that. We know what actually. I like the commentator's going to add this, though.
Actually, Aisha was the wife who was most open to the idea. But look at this right here. These verses were abrogated in recitation, but not in ruling. Well, then that's still a rule. That's still a rule, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, because keep in mind, they don't want to give up. They don't want to give up the verse of stoning, right? They want to say you still practice this, and so oops, can't toss out the breastfeeding verse either. But what's interesting here is what Mary was saying about how breastfeeding even a grown man with a beard makes him biologically your son. Islam kind of stands or falls with the truth of that claim, because if you don't have something like that, then this contradicts the ruling about adoption, right? So, I mean, think about the reasoning here. Muhammad, why is it okay for you to take the wife of your own adopted son? Isn't that incest? No, because he's not really my biological son. And since he's not really my biological son, these rules about, who you're allowed to have sex with and who you're not allowed to have sex with don't apply, because he's not really my biological son. Okay, so it's about if you're someone's real biological relative, then these rules don't apply. I mean, the rules only apply if it's real biological relationship. Okay, well, on the issue of breastfeeding an adult, why would breastfeeding a grown man make that man off limits for sex? Unless he's actually becoming your biological son somehow. If he's not becoming your biological son, then the same reasoning would apply. He's not really your biological son, so why can't you have sex with him, right?
Just so you know, some of those hadith are sapi hadith. That's how we know they're good to go. They're sapi. That urine is not going to cause problems. Challenge the YouTube super chat devs to a mubahala. Well, good luck on that. Good luck on you, mubahala. Cool. So, all right, we've been going for almost 2.5 hours. We're going to close this out. Mary, where can people follow you and learn more about all this crazy nonsense that you have done all the research for? God bless you for that, because I don't want to do it.
You can follow me on Recent Answers. We have gone through things that represent like 15, 20 different challenges to Islam. Islam cannot be true if. Islam cannot be true if. 15 or 20 different things. This isn't just point and laugh at Muhammad, although Muhammad is a very risible figure. This is about the foundations of Islam, the claims that Muhammad is a prophet, the claims that this is from God. And just the second, and again, it has this outer piety. Oh, look at us. We are the most modest, the most humble with our 6-year pregnancies and everything else. And everything is corrupt. Everything is just depraved and sick and twisted and illogical and incoherent and contradictory and ridiculous. He is one of the most obvious false prophets in the world, if not the most obvious false prophet.
He is.
And this is what we're bringing up, is that these are all reasons that Islam is false. It's not just Muhammad was weird. Islam is false because of this.
Because again, the Quran says you have to submit to all of Muhammad's decisions. That's in Surah 4, and in Surah 33, he's the pattern of conduct for Muslims. So, I mean, like, Allah should know better than picking this guy. Like, Allah made a mistake. You're picking one of the worst people ever to be the pattern of conduct for all Muslims who follow you. This is not from God. This is not from God at all. This is clearly Muhammad's sock puppet and some demonic influence sprinkled in my view. But yeah. Thanks for coming, everyone. Follow Mary's work on Reason Answers Apologetics. We'll see you guys on Thursday for a call-in stream. Talk to you then. You made it to the end of this video, which means this message matters to you. If you want to see more content like this reaching people for Christ, you can help make it happen. Your support makes these videos possible. Click the link below and donate today. And if you want to go even deeper, consider joining our Patreon community. You'll get early access to videos, behind-the-scenes content, and a place to connect with others passionate about this mission.